Good morning, everybody. We're so excited to have you all join us today for this really important conversation. As Dr. Chang mentioned, my name is Jessica Schneider, and I direct our Faculty Fellows Research Program here in the Translational Health Research Center at Texas State University. So, our mission in THRC is to really serve as an accelerator to increase collaborative funded research at Texas State, and then to go on to then share that research with key stakeholders and external audiences, with always with the overarching goal to foster healthy and resilient people and places. As a center, we're very focused on the health and resilience of the STEM workforce, particularly in Texas, because we are fully aware of the critical role that health professionals play in maintaining the health and resilience of our communities. One way that we facilitate this work is through our Faculty Fellows program. And we're so excited to be working with Dr. Chang as a fellow in our center this year and moving into the next year. Carolyn's work explores novel ways to increase both the quantity and quality of our clinical healthcare and life sciences workforce, including directly addressing shortages in the workforce that support research and clinical trials. So we will be supporting Carolyn this year as she pursues research and grants to better understand the needs of this workforce and to develop programs that will foster the knowledge and skills needed for effective clinical research professionals. And so with all of that said, I want to hand it back to Carolyn to kick off the rest of our conversation.
Great. Thank you, Jessica. So yes, this year I am collaborating with the Translational Health Research Center as a part of their Faculty Fellows program. And my project overview spans creating and implementing regional forums for regional collaboration, support, development, and conduct among life science and clinical workforce leaders in Central Texas. I have an overarching goal to find out where in Texas for this series, clinical research professional workforce is in demand and where it needs to grow. And this insight will help me and us at Texas State and other institutions guide future program development, both academic and competitive. And so this summer, we're conducting a series of 3 virtual ECHO sessions. This is session 1 that you're in, as well as a final in-person hybrid one-day symposium event that will be at our Round Rock campus. And that will be held on August 13th. And on the next slide, there's just a little tile about that. Great. And you will receive information about other sessions in the series, as well as this one-day event after this session today. During all of these sessions, you'll be interacting with myself and also the other professionals you've met in the Translational Health Research Center, including Shelby and Jessica, as well as Dr. Melinda Villagran, who serves as Executive Director of the Translational Health Research Center. And so we're going to dive right into the main content of today's session. Like I mentioned earlier, we'll talk about the national reports. We're going to look at some Texas-specific data that we've generated recently. We'll hear from our current professionals, and then as a collective, have a discussion around the state of the workforce pipeline. And so to situate ourselves on the next slide, with the state of this workforce, the first place that I've started, and I'm sure others start, is looking at the recent national reports regarding this issue. If you just do a Google Scholar search about this topic, there are many recent reports. One I want to really highlight and that we're using data from is from the Association for Clinical Research Professionals from 2020. It's a report that was done with Techonomy Partners and included a statistical analysis of workforce trends at that time. Additionally, we have some more recent papers, for example, by Friel et al., published in Clinical Trials entitled now is the time to fix the clinical research workforce crisis. And so in these articles, the scale of the workforce problem is quantified. On the next slide, we can see some numbers that kind of highlight this. And so you can see on our shared slide, for every experienced clinical research coordinator seeking work, there are approximately 7 jobs posted. And for every experienced clinical research nurse seeking work, there are 10 jobs posted. This is nationally. Additionally, it's reported there's 9.9% growth in the US job market for clinical research coordinators between 2016 and then continuing through to 2026. And then 60% of clinical research professionals with a 5 to 10 year tenure, we've seen a 60% increase in the resignation rate compared to 2020. And so this is 2023 data. And so we can see on a scale level, there is, a significant workforce demand issue highlighted. And then, looking at other reports, origins for this crisis are highlighted. And so the national literature as a collective cites a variety of causes, and many of you are professionals in this workforce and may be very familiar with some of these issues and this crisis. And so I'm being very brief because I don't want to tell you about your own profession because y'all are the experts. But some origins for this crisis include first, reliance on a transient workforce, so freelance contractors or grant appointed positions that are not permanent. A lack of professional identity. And so for me, as a faculty fellow conducting this work, this is the point where we encounter issues. The US Bureau of Labor and Statistics does not recognize clinical research professionals as a recognized profession. And so all the subsequent data and reporting that we get on a national scale does not allow us to look at trends or demand or history of this profession and the workforce. What we see here, for example, at Texas State, is that this profession is rarely mentioned in undergraduate coursework or advising. And another origin is despite the significant intellectual and skill requirements for these roles, we can find a lack of career infrastructure or centrally funded training program. There's a lack of mandatory qualifications or established pathways of career development. And I think on that last point, we're starting to see that in other parts of the United States, some programs are being developed to address those specific points, but this is still an origin for this crisis. And so we're going to move into the data looking at the current state. And so what we've done here at Texas State, very quickly to give you up-to-the-date information, as I mentioned, we cannot just pull data from like the US Bureau of Labor Statistics or even Texas Workforce Commission because of the categorization of these jobs. And so we conducted our data using an internet scrape looking at common job advertisement platforms. And so we looked at Handshake, which may not be familiar to many of y'all. This is what the universities use as their job platform. Many students start out really only knowing how to use Handshake in their job search. We also looked at Indeed and then also LinkedIn. And we scraped for all positions that included the term clinical research in their job title. We found that there were very few postings on Handshake, which was not surprising as it's really just very university centered in terms of a job platform. Indeed had many posts, but LinkedIn was the most comprehensive. And so we continued our analyses using LinkedIn data. And so we did a full internet scrape. We can go back, Shelby. After the scrape, we removed duplicate postings. We standardized job titles. We actually used the LinkedIn job level categorization to standardize job levels, as the postings did not all use standardized formattings or requirements. We binned the location postings by county, and then we prepared figures. And so what we're doing today is we compared what we found, and this was done in May of this year, to the statistical findings in that ACRP report from 2020. And so what we found on May 25th of 2024, we found a total of 196 unduplicated clinical research related jobs posted on LinkedIn at the time. They were categorized as displayed in the table that's on the screen. And so similar to the national findings from 2020, most of the job postings were for clinical research coordinators, followed by managers, clinical trial managers and associates, as well as assistants, with the least number of postings for specialists and nurses. We then continued on with the data. Next slide, Shelby. Great. And so this is the figure from the ACRP report, looking at the level of qualifications required for each of the roles. And so, as I mentioned earlier, for the job postings on the web scrape, we used the LinkedIn kind of level of job categorization that everyone followed in the same way for the postings to standardize, as not all the postings contain the same amount of information. So nationally, you can see a breakdown in that report from 2020 of the level of experience required for the different job roles. And in our May data, we found from LinkedIn a pretty similar spread of qualifications required for each of the roles. Next slide, Shelby. Where we see most of the positions requiring, they either don't list the requirements, it's a mystery, or they are posted at entry level for about 50% of the postings, and then the rest are at associate to director level. Okay, next slide. We also looked at where the jobs are being posted. So this is from the ACRP report in 2020. And if you zoom in on Texas, you really see that triangle of where the jobs are located. And then for our search, our scrape in May, we see that same triangle highlighted, so in the right-hand map of Texas. But we also, and it's not super clear for y'all, I apologize, we also see that we are finding job postings around the triangle in more places than in 2020. So the locations of these roles is expanding between May of this year and when this report was conducted, which is postings from 2016 to 2020. Okay, next slide. And so these were all the companies or institutions we found with active postings in May of this year. And so there were 120 unduplicated companies or employers. And so that's our current data as we stand right now. And we're hoping to continue collecting that data and also supplement it with input from these sessions and from those who are actively in the workforce in Texas.